Scotland pulled off one of those nights that stay in the memory, not so much by the quality of the performance, but by the sheer unexpectedness of the result. For 60 minutes, there was nothing to suggest that we'd be witnessing a goal fest, especially not one kicked off by a Greek goalkeeping disaster of epic proportions. It was the kind of mistake that you'd expect to see punished in Glasgow, and punished it was. In a game that looked like it would drift into another frustrating night for the Tartan Army, Steve Clarke's men flipped the script completely. It all started in typical fashion. A cagey, balanced affair with both sides struggling to find rhythm. Scotland didn't come out flying, didn't look particularly dangerous, and at 0-0, with an hour gone, it looked like another one of those nights where we just wouldn't make the breakthrough. But then came the chaos. For goals in half an hour, including what can only be described as an absolute howler from the Greek goalkeeper. A calamitous moment that, frankly, might go down as one of the worst pieces of goalkeeping seen by a visiting team at Hampden in years. You don't want to hammer the guy, especially when the football gods have a way of making you eat your words. There's every chance that same keeper rocks up at Celtic Park in a European tie sometime soon and puts in a clean sheet masterclass, just to make us all look daft. But on this particular night, he crumbled, and Scotland took full advantage. What followed was being called by some, quite accurately, a textbook case of tactical thievery by Steve Clarke. It was a performance that didn't scream dominance, but screamed efficiency. Staying in the game, holding tight, waiting for the other team to blink. And when Greece blinked, Scotland pounced. Credit has to go to the players for not panicking. When it went 1-0 down, they didn't fold. Instead, they kept doing the basics, got the goal back through Christie, and from that point on, it was Greece who fell apart. Their response to the equalizer was total collapse, and Scotland smelled blood. The mood turned, the confidence rose, and suddenly it looked like a different team out there. And we have to be honest, this wasn't a night many expected 3 points from. Not after recent performances, not after the dip in form and the public pressure on Clarke. Yet, in the end, the manager proved a few people wrong. That's football. It's fickle, it's fast, and sometimes, it gives you the exact response you weren't expecting. Also worth mentioning, and commiserations here, is that the defeat will have stung for our Greek friends. One of them, responsible for the photography on this very channel, was maybe even at Hampden snapping Scotland players celebrating. Rough night if so. But such is football. You're up 1 week, down the next. Now, looking ahead, it sets things up beautifully for Sunday. Win that, and suddenly next month's international break takes on a whole new meaning. A trip to Greece, a home game against Denmark, and we're talking about flights to the United States, or maybe Germany, depending on how things fall. Big stuff on the horizon. Back to the pitch, though, and one of the big positives on the night was seeing Kieran Tierney back on the grass looking confident again. He's had a rough patch, plenty of criticism, some of it deserved. But when he came on, there was a calmness to his play that we've missed. He didn't do anything outrageous, but he did the simple things well. Held the ball, beat his man, made good decisions. And sometimes, that's all it takes to rebuild form. Small moments of composure that remind everyone why he was such a key player before. And let's not forget Ben Doak as well. That crossfield ball he played in the second half, right after the Greek goal, was class. Shows he switched on, and didn't let the earlier moment rattle him. That kind of resilience is what you want in these games. They weren't world-beating performances, but they were solid, confidence-boosting appearances from players who've been under the microscope. And speaking of pressure, let's talk about Alistair Johnston. Still no exact timeline for his return, although Brendan Rodgers is saying he's back in training ahead of the Dundee game. Johnston himself is playing it cooler, not putting a date on it, but it sounds like he's nearly there. And let's be honest, Celtic fans are desperate to have him back. That right-hand side, without him, has been painful in recent weeks. We can talk about stats, the assists, the defensive cover, the leadership, but the truth is, when Johnston's not on the pitch, there's a void. He's not just a right back, he's a presence. He drags the team forward, he demands more, and he brings an intensity that's been sorely missing. No one else in the squad does what he does, and when you're trying to push for titles, especially in a season that's been anything but smooth, missing a player like that has ripple effects. Now, the worst thing Celtic can do is rush him. We've seen what happens when players come back too soon. One re-injury, and you're set back another month. Ideally, he gets a run out against Dundee, just to get some minutes in the legs. Even a half hour. then maybe we see him make the bench against Hearts. Because, let's face it, if he's anything close to match fit, you want him starting the game against Rangers at Hampton. That game could define the trajectory of the season. And having a fit Johnston back for that would be a massive lift, not just tactically, but psychologically. Now, as for who plays ahead of him on that right wing, that's where it gets tricky. We've thrown the kitchen sink at that position this season. Forrest, Young, Maeda, even Negrin, and nothing has stuck. It's been a revolving door of mediocrity. At this point, even the idea of shifting Palma to the right, despite him clearly being a left-sided player, is being floated. That's how desperate the situation is. James Forrest might be the most divisive shout of all. Played well in that win over Falkirk, sure, but is he really the long-term solution? Probably not. He's a veteran now, a rotation option at best, but with his record against Hearts and the lack of real answers in that position, it's hard to totally rule him out for some minutes. But if he's starting, it means we're out of ideas. Maeda on the right? That experiment seems to have failed. Young hasn't taken his chances. Negrin doesn't have the pace. And Palma is just too one-footed on that side. Honestly, it's a mess. The kind of mess that makes you wonder what the long-term planning was when the squad was built this summer. And that leads to a bigger question. If Brendan Rodgers is this coach who's known for developing players, then now's the time to prove it. Can he mold someone like Palma into a two-sided winger? Can he get more from Young? Can he make something out of the pieces he's got? Because the solutions aren't walking through the door in January, we know how cautious the board is with winter signings. So what's in the building has to work. And speaking of people walking through the door, or not walking at all, Daisen Maeda is apparently dealing with tightness in his left foot. That's why he's out of Japan's match against Paraguay. Could be back for the Brazil game. But the way this season's gone, Celtic fans will be watching that situation like hawks. We simply cannot afford to lose another forward, especially one with Maeda's work rate and versatility. And in other international news, Liam Scales missed Ireland's trip to Portugal due to a family bereavement. Thoughts with him and his family. Hopefully, he's back for their next fixture. He's quietly become an important player for both club and country this season. Back at Celtic, though, the off-pitch drama continues. And if you've been paying attention, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The minutes from that meeting between the club and the fans collective. And look, we'll dive deep into that soon, because there's plenty to unpack, from the club's lack of accountability to their borderline delusional view of how supporters perceive their work. But for now, let's just say this. The disconnect between boardroom and fanbase has never felt wider. And maybe that's why nights like the one we just saw from Scotland hit differently. In a time when fans feel unheard, disrespected even, seeing a team fight back, prove doubters wrong, and give the fans something to shout about, well, it just means more. Especially when your club is doing everything in its power to remind you how far removed they are from the passion in the stands. And that brings us to the real meat of this week. The aftermath of the meeting between Celtic's board and the fan collective, and the release of those now infamous minutes. Let's not sugarcoat this. It was a car crash. Not because supporters came in all guns blazing with unrealistic demands, but because the club had every opportunity to show humility, transparency, and accountability, and they fluffed it. Worse than fluffed it, really. They showed their true colors. Detached, defensive, and completely lacking the self-awareness you'd expect from an institution of Celtic size and history. We're told this club wants to be world-class in everything it does. That's the phrase Michael Nicholson threw out there. World-class. Now let's sit with that for a second. Is anything about the way Celtic currently operates world-class? The stadium's been rotting away for years, seats fading, paint peeling, facilities outdated. The dressing room was upgraded, sure, but the fan experience? Falling apart. No plan for meaningful investment in the matchday experience. No forward thinking in terms of stadium expansion or technology. And yet we're being asked to believe that this is part of a world-class strategy? Here's the thing. The fans collective didn't rock up demanding miracles. They asked 7 simple questions. Questions that any well-run club should have no problem answering. Questions about long-term strategy, summer transfers, internal communication, and how the board plans to modernize the club. Instead of answers, they got smirks, shrugs, and blanket statements. When pressed on why Brendan Rodgers had referred to some players as club signings, Michael Nicholson reportedly just shrugged his shoulders. That's our CEO. That's the guy steering the ship. couldn't even be bothered to give a straight answer. Or worse, didn't have one. And look, no one's expecting Nicholson to be a showman or a politician. We don't need another suit who loves the camera. But the complete refusal to engage even on the club's own safe channels. A 5-minute scripted video on the club's YouTube, a statement with a name on it, anything, shows just how unwilling he is to take public responsibility. And if he won't do that, why should any supporter trust the decisions being made behind closed doors? Then there's Chris McKay, who, despite not being nearly as high-profile, actually came across, according to those at the meeting, as slightly more competent in the room. Not because he had better answers, but because at least he spoke like a professional. Still, the bar is low. The main issue is that neither of them seems to grasp the fundamental truth here. The fans aren't the enemy. The supporters are the soul of this club. They are the reason Celtic has the global standing it does. And yet, they're being treated like a nuisance. An inconvenience to be managed rather than a community to be respected. And that was perhaps the most telling part of the entire meeting. It's clear the board thinks the supporters collective is just a small group of loud troublemakers, not representative of the wider support. That is such a dangerous mindset. When your most engaged, invested fans are treated with suspicion and disdain, it tells you everything about the culture at the top of the club. It's not just about poor communication anymore. The club is now using communication as a shield to deflect from actual issues. It's like they believe that if they can just reword things better, fans will stop complaining. As if the outrage is all just a misunderstanding. No, the issue is not that we don't understand what the club is doing. The issue is that we do understand, and we don't like it. Fans aren't angry because someone forgot to send a nice tweet. They're angry because this club is regressing, because it's failing to grow, and because every time you ask for change, you're met with either radio silence or a cold corporate brush-off. Take the summer transfer window. When supporters asked why the business wasn't done early enough to strengthen the squad for European qualifiers, the board's response was to highlight 2 signings they got right, Kwan and Negrin. Imagine that. 2 examples dragged out as proof that the strategy is sound, while completely ignoring the half-dozen areas where we were clearly underprepared. It's insulting. No accountability. No reflection. Just a desperate need to spin the narrative. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. Whispers are turning into roars around Parkhead this week, as rumors swirl that Brendan Rodgers has made up his mind, and it's not the news Celtic fans wanted to hear. After months of speculation and subtle hints, sources close to the club suggest that Rodgers has decided to step away from Celtic at the end of the season, sending shockwaves through Scottish football. The Northern Irishman, who returned to the Glasgow Giants for a second spell after Ange Postecoglou's departure, has often spoken of his deep affection for the club and its supporters. But according to insiders, Rodgers has grown increasingly frustrated behind the scenes, with transfer policies, boardroom disagreements, and perhaps a feeling that he has taken this squad as far as he can. Though nothing official has been announced, the air around Lennoxtown feels heavy with uncertainty. Players have reportedly noticed a change in the manager's demeanor in recent weeks, quieter, more distant, perhaps even resigned. One senior player was overheard saying, "It feels like the end of something." If true, this would mark another seismic moment for Scottish football. Rodgers' first departure to Leicester City in 2019 remains one of the most dramatic exits in recent memory, and many supporters still remember the sting of that sudden move mid-season. Yet this time, if he truly is preparing to go, the tone feels different, more sorrow than shock, more inevitability than betrayal. Names are already being whispered as potential successors, but for now, the focus is squarely on Rodgers himself. Where would he go next? A return to the Premier League? A fresh challenge abroad? Or perhaps a well-earned break after years under the relentless pressure of the Celtic hot seat? Whatever comes next, one thing is certain. If Brendan Rodgers does leave, he will do so having left a deep mark on Scottish football, both for his triumphs and the storms that always seem to follow him. For Celtic fans, the rumor is almost too heavy to believe, yet impossible to ignore. Scotland holds its breath, waiting to see if the whispers become truth. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, Share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.